Now we'll move on to another enormous industry in Alaska, which is the visitor products industry, which represents an incredible amount of, it's going through a period of incredible growth. Something that I am proud to say in Juneau, and I say it a lot, is Juneau is the most visited city in Alaska in the summertime. And that's something that not a lot of, yeah, right? If you've been to Alaska, chances are you've been to Juneau, which is exciting. I'm not Kirby Day. Kirby cannot be with us today. He's in California tending to some other affairs, but he has been the co-chair of our visitor products cluster working group for several years. I'm going to give brief introductions to each of these gentlemen, and they're going to dive in, same format. We're going to 10 minutes of intensity, get some Q&A, and then we're going to have every one of these panelists in our breakout sessions. You're going to get another chance with them. So if you don't feel like you got enough of your questions in, they're going to stick around for this afternoon for those sessions. So let me just introduce who we have. I think all of these folks here are well known. John Binkley, third generation Alaskan, grew up in the family tour business, operating sternwheel riverboats in Fairbanks. He served as the CEO of the family business, and now his sons operate the family tourism business through the fourth generation. John's extensive record of civic service includes serving in the Alaska House of Representatives and then the State Senate, as well as chairman of the Alaska Railroad Corporation for 13 years, where he continues to serve as a member of the board of directors. He's now president of Cruise Line International Association, Alaska. And we also have Captain Dan Blanchard. Dan has always been around boats, owner and operator of Blanchard Marine, captain of sightseeing vessels at Glacier Bay Lodge. Next, at the Sightseeing Cruise West, working through the ranks from captain to director of marine operations to vice president of operations, and then joining American Safari Cruises. He acquired the company in 2008, and as principal CEO launched Inner Sea Discoveries, which transformed itself in 2013 into the current Uncruise Adventures. And we have Scott Haberstad. Scott is the lifelong Alaskan, currently residing in Anchorage. He's from Ketchikan. He began his career in Ketchikan, flying for Taquan Airs. He soon went to work for Ketchikan Visitor Bureau as the director of marketing, and in 2001 went to work for Alaska Airlines as an account executive and was later elevated to manager of regional sales. Alaskan is now the director of sales and community marketing for Alaska Airlines. So super excited about the caliber of all of our panels. They're going to frame up some big opportunities, and please be ready for your questions. Line up here after the last panel, and we're on to it. So we are starting with John. Okay. Nice. And I'm going to sit here, John.
Thank you very much, Brian, and good afternoon, innovators. What a thrill and a pleasure to be here. As Brian mentioned, I'm from Fairbanks. I was really blessed to grow up in the visitor industry, but more importantly than that, I was blessed with great parents who were innovators themselves, who were entrepreneurs, who were hard workers. And growing up in a family business, you just are able to absorb those traits from your parents. And I just couldn't be more pleased and thankful for the parents that I had and what they instilled in us. And I hope that my wife and I have done the same for our kids, and they're doing the same for their grandkids in our business as well. So my dad was actually born down in Wrangell, came to go to the University of Alaska in the late 30s, fell in love with the interior, but more importantly, my mom, who was going to the University of Alaska in Fairbanks at the time. And so they stayed in Fairbanks, and he had a riverboating background. That's where my grandfather ran on the Stikine River. But they had an opportunity as the tourism industry was just in its infancy in the late 40s after World War II and the early 50s, as visitors started to want to come to Alaska to start a little tour business. And they started it really with nothing and have built it into the family business it's been. And so I'm pleased to be a part of it, to see the growth that's taken place over decades, really, and how this industry has grown from what some people thought was just a hobby in those days to really an industry that thrives, that employs overall over 40,000 people in Alaska, and contributes significantly to Alaska's economy. So let's talk a little bit about expanded opportunities through growth and changing travel trends. That's really the topic for today. I want to explain what Cruise Lines International Association Alaska is. We're affiliated with a global industry, the cruise industry around the globe. Here in Alaska, we have these members and these cruise lines that come to our state, and you probably recognize many of them: Carnival, Holland America, who's been here since, I think, 1948 in Alaska, Princess Cruises, Royal Caribbean, all of the ones that are known globally and internationally that bring ships to Alaska. So those are our member lines, and we're an association of those members who bring ships to Alaska. Let's talk a little bit about the growth of the cruise industry recently in the last 19, 20 years in Alaska, and how it's really expanded and grown significantly. And I think maybe one of these is a pointer. Maybe not. But you can see about the time Scott Haberstad started with Alaska Airlines, where this industry was, and how significant the growth really has been over time of the last 19 years. You can see we had pretty steady growth up until 2010, 2011. Combination of events during those previous 2 years that caused that dip in the industry. The industry plans 2 years in advance. So they schedule their itineraries and their ships around the world 2 years out. So really the events of 2010 and 2011 occurred in 2008 and 2009. And we had a combination of significantly increased taxes that came into specifically the cruise ship industry in 2008 when they were implemented. The effect of those were felt in 2009, and the decisions were made to pull ships from Alaska. It also coincided with a worldwide recession that we had as the financial collapse came and went in the world. And the combination of an expensive destination, Alaska, increasing costs because of increased taxes and regulatory restrictions, caused the industry to take ships, move them out of Alaska, and put them other places around the globe. The industry itself still continued to grow, but in Alaska we saw a significant dip. We had some corrections that the legislature and the governor were able to implement to lower the taxes, to stabilize some of the regulatory effects, and then we started to grow again. You can see just a little dip in at 14 and 15. That was when the industry really started to grow around the world, and the shipyard capacity wasn't up to speed to build new vessels to meet the needs, meet the demands that the industry was growing. And so some capacity was pulled out of Alaska and moved primarily to Asia to expand the growth in that market in Asia. And then you can see we've had steady growth since then. And what's really exciting is about 2018 and 2019. I'm going to talk about, this is globally what's happening with the industry. Right now in the world, in this year, 2018, there will be 26 new ships that will come out of shipyards that will be put into service in the cruise industry around the world. What's more exciting than that is between now and 2026, there are 95 ships with firm orders in shipyards. $60 billion of private sector capital has been committed to build those new ships between now and 2026. And that will put almost 250,000 new berths into effect around the globe between now and 2026. Now, we know what's going to happen in 2018 and 19 in Alaska. We don't know what's going to happen beyond that in Alaska, but we know what's going to happen globally with this industry. It's going to grow significantly. And if Alaska keeps its market share, we're going to see significant growth beyond 2018 and 19, all the way through 2026. Think about that. That's 500,000 beds a night that they've got to put heads on pillows on cruise ships around the world. It's a lot of people cruising. So here in Alaska in 2018, this year, we're going to see about 1,165,500 total passengers, cruise visitors that are coming to Alaska. That's a 7% growth over last year, 2017, which was an all-time record for us. Some of the capacity that's going to generate that growth, the Norwegian Bliss, this is one of the new ships that was purpose-built for Alaska. It's just coming out of the shipyard now, and its first voyages will be in Alaska, and it was built for Alaska. And that ship will hold about, at total capacity that we expect, about 4,800 passengers on that ship. Also, Princess Cruises is adding another full ship to Alaska, the Golden Princess, which will come across the Gulf of Alaska, come through southeast, but also go up to south central Alaska, where those visitors have an opportunity to spread out throughout the northern part of the state to the Kenai Peninsula, to the Seward Peninsula, or to Seward, to the interior, to Denali, to Fairbanks, hopefully come up and go on a riverboat ride all the way in Fairbanks. And so that's going to be a tremendous increase in the capacity coming across the Gulf of Alaska. Now, 2019, which we have, all of the itineraries are set. They're selling these cruises now for 2019. And we can look and see what the numbers are going to actually be for 2019. That's going to be 1,310,000 cruise visitors coming to Alaska in 2019. That's going to be a 12% growth over 2018. So combined between now and 2019, we're going to see 19% growth in the cruise visitor industry. That is a tremendous amount of opportunity, really, for Alaskans to be able to capture some of that revenue that's coming up to Alaska. Just some ideas on the increase in spending. The annual increase in spending in Skagway, another $50 million per year will be spent in Skagway. Another $52 million, this is just passengers. When they walk off, what they spend in those communities. Another $52 million in Ketchikan will be spent every year, and another $50 million in Juneau every year. So here's when we look at the economic impact for both the cruise ship spending, the passenger spending, and the crew spending. Significant amount of number of crew members that come up to Alaska. They get off the ships as well, and they spend money in our communities. So there's nearly $1 billion of statewide spending between May and September. That was in 2017, this last year, not counting the increase that we're going to see in the next 2 years. That translates to $6.5 million every day for 150 days that's dropped in communities throughout Alaska. That's 65,000 $100 bills, Ben Franklin's, that are falling out of people's pocket every day between May and September. And that's your job, is to go out and pick up and find those $100 bills and put them in your pocket and get them off the street. So let's talk a little bit about some of the trends that we're seeing in the cruise industry that might present some opportunities for all of you. This is an interesting one. We think of, excuse me, I'm going to grab just a quick glass of water, but we think of the cruises as very high-end cruisers. And there are. There are people who are millionaires and very wealthy people who go on cruises. But 33%, a third of all cruisers, have incomes of less than $80,000. So it doesn't take, not everybody's going on a helicopter ride that costs $500. People, a lot of people, tremendous amount of people are looking for a lower price point and value in the tour excursions that they do when they get off the ship and what they want to do in the local communities. So there's tour products at all budget levels for those passengers. Transformational travel. This is something that is another trend that we see in the cruise industry. People want more than just a vacation for themselves. They want cultural immersion. They want to be able to volunteer in some cases through adventures. And there's really a shift of perspective by many of the cruise passengers. We have a local whale watching with Bob and Don here, where they go out and do research, where some of their visitors who are whale watching make reports back to NOAA in terms of what some of the whales are doing, where people can feel as though they participate in something more than just observation. One of the larger companies, Carnival, has another entity called Fathom, where they do volunteerism when the ships go to different countries, whether it be in the Caribbean or other places around the world, where they set up opportunities for them to get off the ship and volunteer to help in those communities. Skip generations. We're seeing more and more grandparents are bringing their grandkids along on their vacations. So an opportunity looking at some kind of tours that appeal to both younger kids and older generations as well. That is some kind of an experience that they can share together. Focus on health. People, all of us are much more health conscious today than we were many years ago. And food travel is very, very popular. So if you can find a way to combine those of local and healthy food options, that's something that people are looking for in their tour products when they come ashore. We have examples. I know one in Juneau here, the Juneau Food Tours. Midge, are you here, Midge? Yeah, there she is. Has a great product here where she takes local visitors around to different food opportunities around the community. It's very popular. It's one that is a low capital requirement to entry. You don't have to buy helicopters to put together that product. It's innovative, it's a great idea, and it's very successful and what people want. Smart travel technology. Technology is becoming more and more ingrained in all of us, and the ships are adapting to that. They now are able to track people on board the ships, know what their preferences are, whether it be in a restaurant or what kind of activities they like on the ship. They push out messaging to those people who desire it to let them know when there's lectures or there's shows that they might appreciate, or there's a particular cut of steak in a particular restaurant on the ship, so that people are more aware, and taking advantage of that as those people come ashore. What kind of technology can we use to reach those people and to encourage them to go to our tour activities or connect with them somehow? Even now, I know in the legislature there's a bill that's up that will allow people to buy their fishing licenses online and keep that fishing license on your phone. Saves them time. They don't have to go down to the local store to buy their fishing license, get a paper copy, and put it in their purse or their wallet. So many opportunities for technology out there. What makes a memorable experience? And really, this is an important one. It's a connection to local people. We all think about why people want to come to Alaska, and it's the culture, it's the mountains, it's the glaciers, it's the wildlife, it's the natural beauty. Those are the things that attract people to Alaska. But the number one thing that they enjoy while they're here, that they comment when they leave, are the people. So if you can make a connection, a people-to-people connection, that is very important, and that is something that stays with people for a lifetime, the people that they met in Alaska, the local people. Juneau Food Tours, great example of that. And they're looking for authentic experiences. There's so many different examples of them, but the Saxman Cultural Center, the Ketchikan Log Show down in Ketchikan, Skagway Rail, the Trail of the White Pass up into the mountains, that mountain railroad, dozens and dozens of authentic experiences around Alaska. And pushing the boundaries. This is something that we take for granted now, but many times when you look at helicoptering up to a glacier, that was something that was totally off the wall not too many years ago. People thought about, when they talked about taking a helicopter up to the glacier, a lot of people said, "You're nuts, that'll never work, it'll never happen." Now, thousands and thousands of people do it, and it's something that is a once-in-a-lifetime experience to get up on a glacier and go dog sledding, to drink the pure water right out of the glacial runoff coming out of that live with people forever. And it's those type of experiences that really make Alaska one of the top destinations around the world. Some of the closing thoughts, I know 10 minutes goes by quick here. There's always opportunities to work with the cruise lines. They welcome innovation. They need innovation. For the growth of the industry, they have to have new products, new ideas, new experiences for people around the world. And so they're hungry to get people to bring those new ideas to them to be able to participate in this industry. And as I said before, unprecedented growth. That creates opportunities for everybody. Not only are there opportunities even if we're static in terms of the industry, always opportunities when you have 1 million plus people coming into your communities, but with this kind of growth there, it doubles the opportunities that are out there for people who can find something new or to tap into what people would like to do. And it also, the changing demographics of younger travelers that want more adventure, it creates more opportunities as well. So be creative, be persistent. There's lots of examples of entrepreneurs out there who have tours today that took years and years to actually keep pushing, to keep pushing against the wall, as Larry said, move a little left, move a little right, probe, find an opening, and keep moving forward. It's a great opportunity. I know I recently had a cup of coffee with the former president of Princess Cruises, and we talked about the growth that we're going to see and how we can handle that growth. And he reminded me that in the 90s here in Juneau, when they had 2 ships that were 550 passenger ships, and they were replacing those ships with 900 passenger ships. And people said, how can we ever handle a ship coming in with 900 passengers? It won't happen. We can't get them off the ship quick enough. We can't get them across the dock. We can't get them down the street. We can't get them out to the excursions around the community. We're never going to happen. But you know, people are innovative. People think about opportunities to move people more efficiently. How do we get them out to different activities? How do we spread it out to different communities around the state? And people are resilient in figuring out solutions to problems, particularly when there's opportunity associated with those problems. So thank you for the opportunity to present. Look forward to questions in the smaller groups where we can chat a little bit further about it. Thank you.
Ready? No, you're Dan. Dan Blanchard. 10 minutes.
He says 10 minutes, strictly. My name's Dan. I'm the owner of Uncruise Adventures. We'll try and get a few slides up for you here. I'm here to talk to you today about an innovation that we're working on and have been for the last year. It's called Alaska Awakening. For many years, we tried to expand our business just on our own, didn't really tag it. We kept filling up during the summer, and then we found, well, we could just add more dates in the spring. Well, they never filled, guys. We have to actually market it. We needed a theme. So last year, we did a lot of work. We went out and brought a lot of travel writers to Alaska in April and May, and we coined this term Alaska Awakening. And I've been going around the state talking about this because as a business point of view, this has added 21% to our bottom line as far as volume compared to 2008 when we started in late May. 21% with no new capital, just incremental expense to the cost of the passenger. That's pretty amazing for a small business. So I want to show you a little bit about it. This is our emblem that we've been using. Alaska Awakening has, we felt needed a name. It had been tried before as far as spring travel, and we're working with the state organization to make this a thing that we'll do as an industry in 2019. But here's just a real brief video. This was all shot in April and May of last year. Glacier Bay. Snow right
Being here
down
in
to the
spring
water.
Alaska has exceeded my expectations.
It's just you and the wilderness, and that's how I know that I'm in Alaska.
wonderful thing about Uncruise Adventures has been the people that we've met and the crew. They've been amazing. They've taken us on the adventures of our life.
As a captain, that's one of the greatest feelings, is arriving in Alaska.
Now, I'm real happy to say in our first year in this campaign, we're having a big party in Juneau on April 14th. Watch for the announcements. Our boat leaves on April 14th out of Juneau, and the first boat leaves 85% full as of today. Folks, this can happen. And just think what can happen if we do it together. So Alaska Awakening, in our eyes, it's normalizing May as part of the prime season. It's basically saying May is the new June, and April is the new May. In Southeast, what we get is tremendous weather, particularly in May. These are the longest days of the year that we have. If you've been on the water for a long time in Southeast, the fishermen used to call this the painting season for a reason. It's when we had sunshine and it was dry, and that still holds. So who's this client that's coming to do this? The Alaska Awakening client, John was talking about the cruise client, and there's some similarities. Ours is maybe a little bit more affluent because our trips are more expensive. They're small groups. But generally, this client that you're looking at here, they tend to be professionals. They tend to be small business owners. But most interesting, in the 60s and 70s, they were putting on a backpack and going to Europe for $15 to $25 a day. They were traveling around, experiencing life. They were probably one of the early groups that went in the early 1990s to Vietnam as a young married couple. And today, what they're finding is they don't really want the tent anymore, but they want the comfortable bed at night, and they want to get out and explore, and they actually want to sweat during the day. They tend to be city dwellers, and they're in the process of kind of turning life down in the sense that they've gone from the big house to the condominium, and they're traveling as much as they possibly can. So if seeing is believing, May works. And to make work, we have to start in April. But people want more today than just seeing. I tell my staff all the time that when I started in this business, and John, I'm sure it was the same with you, people were really happy to look at things. We'd get people up on the bow of the boat, and they'd look at the glaciers with a cocktail in their hand, and back then, maybe even a cigar. And they were happy to do that. But today, you and I, we don't travel that way. Today, we've got to hop on top of the glacier. We have to feel the cold of the ice, and occasionally, we need to get that sweat on our brow. So it is more about than we have to touch. We just can't see. And that's today's client. This is taken down at Baird Glacier. This is a trip we do thanks to the Forest Service, getting us lots of permits here. But this is an example of the type of things that people expect in our market today, which is the ability to get out and not just see the glacier from the distance, but sink their feet into the mud. They want to see the prints of animals all on the glacier front. It's just an amazing thing. And oftentimes they even see bears going over the tops of the glaciers in the spring. So it's active. It's sweat. It's not the norm, and they know it. And that's one of the attraction pieces we've had about if you tell people that you're going to be in Juneau, Alaska, or Glacier Bay, or anywhere in Southeast, prior to the crowd, it's like when I was growing up, my parents would always say, let's take the trip after school starts and hold you kids out, because we all knew that that's what's the time to go. But in Alaska and Southeast, that's really April and May. And look at this scenery. This is in Glacier Bay. And we actually put snowshoes on the boat for the first month of the season so that our hikes can take place and go off into the wonders of the bay just as they do during the summer, but of course with snowshoes. And then what do they get that they don't get the rest of the year? Northern Lights. That's a big thing we push. This is the type of thing that you can only really experience on a boat anyway with passengers. We haven't quite figured out winter Southeast Alaska travel yet. So we'll stick with April and May, but it's a great time of year for Northern Lights as well as September. And then, of course, a biggie is the bragging rights. We were there when nobody else was around. Alaska is ours. And that's something we talk a lot about. We also talk about that when in the early season, you're going to meet the business owners. I take all my passengers on a little hike around town the very first 4 weeks of the season myself, because the idea is just like John was sharing, it's really not just about the trip they're going to take and what they're going to see, but it's about the people they're going to meet. It's about being around Alaskans and hearing story. So my pitch to you, the innovation I'm asking you as a group of people interested in the travel visitor industry, is what do we do to make this work, and why are we doing it? As I mentioned before, if you're a business owner that is really looking at the bottom line, how easy is it to just add to the season and get that 15 to 25% revenue that you wouldn't normally have? Now, for us, it's 21%. This year, we're going to top $6 million in the April and May period, and I'm happy to say that out of the 30 sailings that we have during that period, only one had to be canceled because of low numbers. So for the first year ever, we're running all our early spring trips, which, man, that's making me happy, let me tell you. And then some other benefits. For those of us that have staggered pricing, and there's a lot going on in this picture, isn't there? But if you look at up top where it says high season rates, we've actually, for the first time in our 22-year history, we have high season rates starting the last week in May. Folks, 10 years ago, we didn't even start till the last week of May. That was our first sailing. Today, our high season rates are now the last week of May, which means a tremendous difference to our bottom line. But the other part of it is it allows us, if you look down at the bottom, it allows attractive pricing, price-sensitive guests in April and May. So we have very low rates early on in the season, and from a business perspective, that makes us affordable to the person that's on the line and gets them in the door where they'll come back in the future. Because a lot of times, our concept is so different, being these small ships, small groups, active adventure, that getting people to even know we exist is a big enough challenge. But if we can do that through pricing, we know we're going to get them back in the future. We get about 25% of our guests return to Alaska in any given year, which is pretty amazing because we never really thought we were going to get a lot of return to Alaska. And then, of course, the thing that I love about this most, if you look at this picture, and this was taken in late April last year, there's a lot of multi-generational families on this boat, and that is a new piece of the travel or small ship travel that's taking place, and it's partly because they come in that time of year where it's more affordable, where they can bring the whole family. So for us, I happened to listen to the senator's speech today, and to our wonderful state representatives up in the Capitol here. And you know, we are all realizing we're in need of revenue in our state. And as the senator put, there's a lot of things in our state that are changing that are actually starting to make the economical scene better. But wouldn't it be great if the travel visitor industry could be a big part of increasing the revenue in our state by hotel tax and all that type of thing, rental car taxes and all the taxes that are paid locally? If that was bumped up 6 weeks, it'd make a tremendous difference. Now, it's already taking place. We're starting on the 14th, and like I said, you're all going to get an invitation for a party down at the hangar. We're going to greet our boat, get it going. Princess is here on the 30th of April this year, and I'm hoping that we'll join hands as years go on and get all of you involved in really bringing May into the norm for the prime season. We'll talk about this in the breakout. How do we get it going? What have we done? And what can we do as an industry to make this happen further? Maybe it'll be a celebration in the governor's mansion next April 19. One thing we learned, we tried 4 years, 5 years doing this alone, and it doesn't work. We have to be together. So please come and join us on April 14th here in Juneau. We're going to have a little party. Thank you.
Take as long as you want. Into next week.
Well, I'm blessed. I mean, this is the third awakening sermon I've heard from the good Reverend Blanchard, and I'm motivated every time I hear it and see it. He does a great job, and it truly is one of those no-brainers. It is innovative. It is what we need to do because it does bring more money to our communities, gets us to work earlier. I'm happy to be back in Southeast Alaska. Thank you for letting me come home. Well, Juneau's not my home. Ketchikan's my home. I feel home while I'm in Juneau. And those of you, Ketchikan kind of came to me. I understand the KI Kings are playing Juneau Douglas High at basketball tonight. So if you don't have anything going on, make sure you go out and support the kids because they work hard. Let me see if I can figure this out. There we go. So I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't talk about state tourism and the impact on the economy in the state of Alaska. John took us through the big cruise industry, and I mean, we're truly blessed to have them as partners in the state of Alaska. Over the years, they've brought so much to us, and they've introduced so many people to the state of Alaska. Those people oftentimes come back as independent travelers, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. Then Dan talked to us about the smaller cruise ships and the Alaska Awakening. I mean, we are really lucky to have two small cruise ship companies based right here in Southeast Alaska with Uncruise and our friends with Alaska Dreams over in Sitka. I mean, they bring so much commerce to our communities that we're just point blank lucky. I sit on the Alaska Tourism Marketing Board, and what we do is we dream stuff up and how to bring more people to Alaska. And the slide you'll see in front of you here kind of talks about what the impact of the state's economy is as it relates to tourism. And this was based on the 2016 AVSP campaign put together by local company McDowell Group. And if you look at it right down here, in 2016, over the entire year, the state of Alaska saw about 2.07 million visitors. That's summer and winter visitors. Those visitors spent about $1.94 billion. That created over 47,000 jobs throughout our state. Jobs like me growing up in Ketchikan. I grew up working the docks of Temsco Airlines, loading and fueling airplanes, and then came back, got my pilot's license, and flew flight seeing tours for about 10 years until my wife told me I had to grow up and get a real job. Those visitors spending about $83 million in visitors' fees in the boroughs and the cities in which we live, that contributed to almost $105 million to the state general coffers. That created over a $4.17 billion in economic activity. Tourism works for Alaska. It's a natural resource that we can take advantage of. They come, they spend their money, and they leave, and it's a great opportunity for us all. But I'm here to turn off the slide, I guess. There we go. So, what does the independent traveler mean to Alaska? Well, in the summer of 2016, we greeted about 670,000 independent travelers in the state of Alaska, or 38% of the travel in the summer. If you combine the winter, we almost brought in 1 million independent travelers, or 46% of the visitors to the state of Alaska that year. What does that mean? They spend about $166 a person. That's significantly higher than other visitors. They're in our communities, they're at hotels, they're at eating at our restaurants. That's putting revenue back into the communities in which they visit. And that $166, I know you're not going to scoff, but that doesn't include their airfare. So airfare is above and beyond that. But those visitors are spending about 10.4 days in our communities, eating at our restaurants and spending money. That generates, in the summer of 2016, about $25 million in bed taxes just in the summer in the 4 big areas of Anchorage, the Denali Borough, the Fairbanks Borough, and then right here in Juneau, there was over $1 million in bed taxes just in the summer of 2016 that went back into the schools, into the community, and helped support the way of life which you enjoy in this community. And it also equated over $7 million in VRT, or vehicle rental tax, throughout the state of Alaska in just the summer. If you add in the winter, that number went up to over $12 million. Money going back into the state's general coffers. And in 2016, most of that money was reinvested. most of that money was reinvested in tourism marketing. Today, that's not the case. Today, with the budgetary woes in which we're realizing the state's investment into tourism marketing is at about the $3 million mark, hopefully if it makes it through the House and the Senate. So, who are Alaska's independent travelers? Well, they're mainly men. 55% are men, but 45% are women. And as you think about it, it's not overly surprising. A lot of our independent travelers, especially within Southeast and Southwest Alaska, are coming for fishing. They love fishing, and that's predominantly men. But 45% of almost 1 million people is a lot of women, so there's opportunities on both sexes. They're highly educated. 80% have some college behind them. 60% have graduated college or have master's degrees. Over half come from the western states, and Washington, California, Oregon, Colorado, Arizona, and Idaho. And if you look at that, and I can speak from experience because it's stuff I look at on a daily basis, all of those communities, that's 50 million people that are less than 5 hours away flight time, 4.5 hours away flight time from Southeast Alaska. 50 million people to draw from. There's a huge pool. If you look at Western Washington, there's over 5 million people in Western Washington that are 2.5 hours away from Juneau. Today, people are driving down to Lake Union to hop on a beaver, to go up to the San Juan Islands, to have an Alaska experience that they think is closer to Seattle. The reality is, it's about the same price to hop on that beaver to fly to Rosario or Friday Harbor as it is to hop on Alaska Airlines and come to Juneau. I mean, the experience is right here, and it's a real authentic experience that John was talking about just a moment ago. The independent traveler is quite affluent. Their average income is about $112,000. They have the discretionary income to do the experiential things in which these in our communities can offer. Another reason we need to thank the cruise industry is about 60% of our independent travelers are repeat visitors. The vast majority of our independent travelers had their first experience in the state of Alaska on a cruise ship. They came up, they sampled it, they enjoyed it, they wanted to come back and spend more time in the communities that they saw. And our independent travelers are younger. The average age is about 6 years younger than the overall average age of the state of Alaska at 49. And that's almost me, which is kind of scary. So what do they want to do? What do the independent traveler want? Well, the top 3 things for the independent traveler coming to the state of Alaska, and this is going to surprise you, the number 1 thing is hiking. They want to get out and they want to see the world. Similar to Dan's folks, they want to get out, touch, feel, experience, get a little sweat on themselves as they hike up the tram, which I haven't done, but I need to. They also want to see, number 2 is wildlife. They want to see the bears out at Pack Creek. They want to see the bears at Ann, and they want to see the whales. They want to experience Alaska, and it's not as much as just seeing it. They want to be there, they want to touch it, they want to feel it. And lastly, they want to go fishing. They want the quintessential river runs through it experience where you're in the river alone, maybe getting run down by a bear at times, but you're catching the trophy fish, you're catching the beautiful halibut and the beautiful day, and you're landing the king or the silver. That's what they want to do. That's the stuff in which you do on a daily basis. Visitors, independent travelers want to live your life. They really do, because it's the things we do on a daily basis. So the opportunities as I see them and as we see them, independent travelers want to live your life. So who better to share it with than you? Southeast Alaska is incredibly close to the Pacific Northwest. Like I talked about, we're only 2 hours away from Seattle, and the population base there is dense. It's becoming more dense, and people want the freedom of Alaska. They want the open area. So that is the messages that we're sending. The messages you're seeing from Liz and her team here at Travel Juneau, from ATMB, it's telling people why they need to come here, actually telling people why they have to come here. And again, we talked about that. There's over 5 million people in Western Washington. Great pool to draw from. Seattle, Western Washington is what Alaska is. I mean, Western Washington used to be what Alaska is today. I mean, now they're just condensed. They want that experience that they don't have anymore. And with that, I wanted to try and get us back on time, and I didn't, and I apologize for that, but I want to thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for your time, and I really want to thank Brian and his team. This is my first Innovation Summit, and I think they've done a phenomenal job. It's a great turnout, great program, so thank you.
Okay, gentlemen, stay seated. We have the microphone here. I'm going to ask John Bittner to come up here to the left because he's first. He's on deck. Bill, Have at it. We have
John,
Bill.
family business. Your son Ryan ran with our sons back in the old days when we had a family business, world famous Gold Creek Salmon Bake. And thanks to Larry Cotter for getting us hundreds of pounds of MRKTHO back in those good old days. So a multifaceted question on the topic of capacity, carrying capacity, and responsibility. What is Juneau's reputation as a destination? What do we need to do to protect it under the onslaught, shall we say, beneficial as you've presented it, of 30% more people getting off cruise ships alone, as well as a few more getting off Alaska Airlines, ferries, every other way. Secondly,
Shall we just answer them one at a time?
it's
I
all,
might forget the other ones.
it's all
Sorry
part,
to say.
it's all part of the same question.
Okay.
What is the plan for accommodating 30% more logistically on land, both in vehicles and pedestrians? Who's responsible for investing in that incremental carrying capacity that will protect our reputation, both among visitors and among local people? What are they thinking on the 30th floor, wherever it is in Miami and Los Angeles, at these companies that are bringing more people, more larger ships? Are they thinking? Are they caring? Whose responsibility is this? And who tells us whose responsibility it is?
That's 4.
It's all part of the same theme.
Okay.
We've got another half hour to discuss it. If it's our responsibility, this community,
Yeah.
then the shipping industry should call off that foolish and expensive lawsuit and let us get the money we need to build whatever you think we need to improve
So that's 5 now.
the carrying capacity.
but these are sounding like rhetorical questions, are they?
They are all about innovation and investment and protecting our reputation and our carrying capacity. You and I talked about the prospects for a hydroelectric powered fixed guideway transit system that would elegantly move these people swiftly among the community. And we were reduced to arm waving because we've never seriously considered that. So finally, what do we do? And that's no panacea, just putting in a light rail system to wherever you want it. What's the plan to protect Juneau's reputation as a destination, affecting not just the millions coming on the cruise ships, but Alaska and Dan's group too? Thank you.
Okay, I'll see if I can remember all those. But starting with, and it really is foundational to all of these, is the reputation of Juneau. It's extremely high. Juneau is a highly rated port, and visitors love it. They love the experiences that they have here, the community, the people they meet. So it's high, and that is the key, is the experience, because that is what will drive the industry to what their itineraries are and where they put their ships. It's fundamental. If people don't have a good time, they're not coming back. And that's what they build their whole business on. So it's critical that they have a good time in Juneau, that it continues. If it wants to be the lead port in Alaska, and really one of the premier destinations in the world, it needs to make sure it maintains that high level of experience. But it really ultimately is the community's responsibility, because the ships, they're publicly traded companies, and they will simply, those are assets. As much as they love Juneau, their responsibility is to their shareholders, and they will move those assets where they get the best return on investment. And if there's a port that people aren't happy with for any number of reasons, including if they don't have a good experience because they can't move about freely, or they feel it's too crowded, or they're overwhelmed by getting to and from places, they won't come back. They'll simply find another itinerary to replace that. And that creates opportunities for other communities as well. You look at Hoonah, what's happened in Hoonah. Just over the last 10 years, it's been incredible growth. Small community, the local Native Corporation has invested significantly in infrastructure there to build out a cruise destination that is now going to be the 4th largest port in Alaska. 85% local hire in that community. So as the industry grows, it may be that Juneau, if Juneau's not able to maintain that level of satisfaction, that they'll find other destinations or other communities to go to around Alaska as well. And if overall the experience isn't good in Alaska, they'll simply move that asset to another destination. That's one reason that the industry is growing so rapidly and that there's so much capital, private sector capital coming into it, is because these assets are mobile. They can move them very quickly. It's not like building a hotel here or investing in infrastructure that's in a permanent location. So it's very attractive because you can move those assets. You ask about the circulator. Those are the innovation things that the community should come up with. Just like when they went from 550 passengers to 900 passenger ships, how the community responded. They had tourism best management practices where they had a mechanism for the community to respond to the industry and say, the industry locally to say, here's problems that we have as local people living here with the industry. We see congestion over here. We see problems over here. People work together within Juneau to find solutions to those problems as the industry grew. So I don't know what all the solutions are, but that's important. They really, and whatever number floor, I think 34th floor you said, of the industries, they are not looking at it, to be perfectly honest with you, Bill. They're not saying, okay, there's a lot of people coming into Juneau. What are we going to do to fix that problem in Juneau? It's a competitive industry. Those one company on the 34th floor are thinking about how are we going to get a best return for our shareholders. And we see Alaska as a growing market. It's great experiences. We're going to put more assets there. Their competitors, they don't know if they're doing the same thing or not. So we as an organization see that collectively what's happening, and we try and make communities aware and do what we can to work with local communities as Cruise Lines International Association Alaska to see what we can do to help accommodate that and do the best we can. The last one, I think, was litigation. And we did that very reluctantly. It's, for those of you who aren't familiar with it, the industry is in litigation with the community of Juneau right now, the city and borough of Juneau, the government entity here, over how the taxes that are collected on the ships that come into Juneau, how they're spent. And there's 1,000 ports that our industry goes to around the world. There's only one that we're in litigation with out of those thousands, and that's right here. It's just we felt that we need some bright lines by the court system to define how those taxes can be used and where they can be used. And we did it very reluctantly. We tried to do it respectfully of the community, understand that there's infrastructure needs that the community has, and they need to have a mechanism to be able to extract taxes from the visitors to be able to pay for those things. We just felt that the tax that was, it's called an entry fee, on the ships themselves to come into the harbor was not being expended properly under the U.S. Constitution, and that's what that litigation is about. So we don't do it with animosity. We did it reluctantly, and we hope that we can find a solution, whether it be through the courts, so they say, okay, here's the rules on how the money's to be spent, or we can do it through negotiations. But we hope we can resolve that. We hope that Juneau continues to grow, that everybody benefits from the economic opportunity that we foresee coming, and that we can work together to find those solutions. And I applaud you for your work to see what we can do to move people more efficiently, more environmentally responsibly, and how we can allow the community to absorb that increase. So thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Do we have another question? Did you have a question? Please. We'll make this our last question for this panel.
Hi, thank you for all the insights you've shared about how we are serving the needs of visitors more, but my question is actually more about how we preserve the character and health of the communities that they are visiting. So I think, I agree that part of the lure to Juneau is the health and the character of the people, and getting to know locals is a big part of the experience. But I think from, at least what I've heard anecdotally from people who've been here for a while, is that the health and character have changed, and maybe not for the best, as evidenced by the fact that part of our downtown is closed half the year, or most of the year, because of the nature of businesses and how that competitive or opportunity cost has played out by serving the needs of tourists. So I'm wondering, how do we balance the character of our community so that we continue to offer visitors, insight into a healthy community, not try to pour from an empty cup? Thank you.
Who wants to, touch that?
Would you like me to respond to that? I'd be happy to. And it's a delicate balance. It's a difficult balance. And some communities that have an economy that is based off a large seasonal influx, I think struggle with that, not just here in Juneau, but around the world. And it's one that you have to answer locally. What kind of a community do you want? Do you want that kind of an economy? Do you want that economic opportunity to come to your community? Or is it too disruptive for some people? Do you want a different type of economy? And it's really a local question, and one that ultimately you have control over in Juneau. There's opportunities to make changes. The city owns 2 of the 4 docks that are here. They just built 2 new docks. Spent a tremendous amount on it, and went out and bonded for that. So they have obligations going forward to pay for those. And it's through your elected local officials, you make those decisions. Local planning and zoning, do you want different types of businesses in different locations? You really have control over that, and the industry respects that. And if it's something different, then there's other options. Scott?
Yeah. If I could just add really quickly, I experienced it firsthand at Ketchikan. So growing up in high school, I remember taking the bus to school and seeing the one cruise ship out in the bay, and it was the Sun Princess, and I can imagine that Gopher was on there, and he was serving drinks, and over time, then I got my commercial pilot's license, and I came back and I was flying float planes, and the company I worked for, TAC One, our job was basically an air taxi. We went to all the logging camps, and we were serving the needs of the logging camps. And I kid you not, it wasn't but overnight. I mean, I went away to college, came back the next year. All the logging camps were gone after the Tongass was shut down, and all we did was fly tourists. All we did was fly visitors. And it was a difficult transition initially, but in reflecting back, if you look at the tapestry of Ketchikan, if you look at the community, it has holistically changed as well. But if it wasn't given if tourism, if the cruise industry didn't come, Ketchikan would be a shell of what it is today. And so I think what John is saying is it's really incumbent upon the community on what they want their community to look like.
Thank you. And certainly the reason that we wanted to highlight this growth is that it represents an opportunity, and there's also challenges that come along with that opportunity. I'm going to ask the 3 of you to stay for a moment, because we have a very brief but important few comments from John Bittner. I'd like to invite John to the stage. John is the Executive Director of Alaska Small Business Development Center, formerly Deputy Commissioner, but more important, he founded the Alaska Hackathon, Anchorage Maker Fair, the Pitch on a Train competition, Alaska Startup Week, and he is here to talk to us briefly about entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much. It was a real honor when Brian asked me to talk to you today. The Innovation Summit is by far my favorite entrepreneurial and innovation event in the state. It's been going on for a very long time, and if you look around you, the number of people in this room, you'll see that it's been growing year by year, and there's a good reason for that. So just as a quick gut check, how many of you, now that you've gone through almost the entire conference, how many of you are feeling inspired? Show of hands, make some noise, make some noise. Let's make this loud. How many of you are feeling excited about the opportunities for Alaska? Yes. Now this is the big one. How many of you are feeling optimistic about Alaska's future? All right. You are not alone. You are not alone. I'm with the Small Business Development Center. We recently surveyed our members to find out how they felt about their future and the future of their businesses. The vast majority of them are optimistic about their perspective for the 2018, and there's a reason for that. They've been doing amazing work, and a lot of that is due to the entrepreneurial and innovation work that has been done over the last 10 years. If you look at the conversations we're having about entrepreneurship and innovation, when I first got into economic development, we used terms like future growth or planting seeds or building the foundation for something in the next 5-10 years. What I've heard here at this conference is we've finally seen the fruits of those efforts. Back when you could only count, the number of entrepreneurial events on one hand, now we've got dozens of events all over the state, from Naknek to Uktiavik and all places in between, Ketchikan, Anchorage, Juneau, Fairbanks. And this is all built on the efforts of a lot of dedicated people who did things that they were told time and time again could not be done. People like Alan Johnston, Kai Holland, Catherine Jernstrom, Gretchen Fauske, Nolan Clouda, and so many others that are in this room and some that aren't here today. And what I want to sort of convey to you is we have a lot to be optimistic about. We have a lot of reason to be excited. There is a lot of activity in this sector, in entrepreneurship, in innovation, tied to our key industries like tourism, like the maritime industry, like healthcare. There are things happening there that are being supported by so many organizations and individuals. It is easier now, and there are more tools and resources now for entrepreneurs and innovators and investors than there have ever been in the history of this state. And you and your children are going to be the first ones who see what a diversified Alaskan economy looks like. You're going to see the fruits of the labor that have been going on for so many decades really come to fruition over the next few years. And it's partly due to organizations like JEDC and their Innovation Summit and others that this is possible. So when you leave here today, I want you to take this with you. I want you to take it to your communities, to your organizations, to your businesses. There is reason to hope, and it is because of the people in this room that reason exists. You have the power to change this economy. You are doing it. The proof is in the pudding. Over $250 million was invested by banks alone into small businesses in Alaska, and you represent the largest portion of businesses in this state. You can do this. You are doing this, and I, for one, can't wait to see what happens over the next 5 years. Thank you so much. I appreciate the few minutes.